Hi, in this video, we'll relax the assumption of the investor can always borrow or save at the same rate, which is the risk-free rate. So what would happen to the efficient frontier if that assumption is relaxed? So we'll still start with the risk-free rate here. So suppose we have a risk-free rate here, starting here. We've already established the tangent portfolio over here. So this is the highest Sharpe ratio we can get with the available set of our risky assets, right? So this provides us with the highest Sharpe ratio. Anything that's here is not feasible. Anything that's lying below here is going to be dominated by any portfolio that provides a higher return. So we already have the tangent portfolio. So the question is, what if they cannot borrow or lend at the same rate? So normally you will face a higher rate if you're borrowing money, right? So this is basically how the banks earn the majority of their income or profit, which is the differences between the savings and the borrowings here. So you will always face a higher rate or risk-free rate in this case if you're borrowing. So we will no longer have the same risk-free rates here with its straight line. So let's start with another risk-free rate first. Let's call it RF primed. Okay, so let's ignore the first one first, right? So we will have the new risk-free rate. We're still going to try to find the tangent portfolio, but starting from this point, right? Starting from this point. Okay, now you can observe is that we have a different slope over here to be tangent with the risky assets curve here. Okay, so it might be somewhere over here to be the final allocation. But is that the final conclusion for our new efficient frontier? No, it is not, because as savers, if you save, you're still going to get the same risk-free rate as before. So we don't actually start from this point. We're actually starting from this bit still. Okay, so if you're a saver, there's nothing changing for you because you're not borrowing. So you still have the same efficient frontier up until this point. Okay, but beyond this point, we would face a different risk-free rate or a different interest rate. So it's only the slope that matters. So we would not jump from this point to the new straight line, but rather we would shift this straight line downwards. So it would look like this. So this point is kinked, but still continuous. Okay, so a final adjustment is that since we're starting with these portfolios or this section of the straight line, this green line here wouldn't be available. So we need to shorten this until they meet at this kink, right? And now this is what we have for our new efficient frontier. Okay, so what is going to be the final allocations? So if you're a saver and nothing would change, yeah, you will still end up at some point here on this section of the straight line. But if you're now borrowing, something different would happen. So take a look at this green line, this section of the green line. Okay, now it is lower, or it's below the curve right here, which means these portfolios will be strictly dominated by any of these combinations for risky assets only. Okay, so because with the same risk, these risky assets will provide higher returns. So this section will be strictly dominated. So we will never choose anything that lies between these 2 points, right? So we would rather invest entirely in the risky assets if we're facing a higher interest rate when we're borrowing, at least for this specific range, right? But here, starting from this point, and you'll see if we extend a little bit, they will always intersect at some point here. But then after this point, let's extend a little bit. After this point, okay, make it a curve. right? After this point, the green line or the straight line stays on top again. Okay, so what is going to be our final efficient frontier? So it will be first the same as before up until you have the tangent portfolio, and then you would stay on the risky asset part here. Okay, let's use a highlighter here. Then you will stay here. Okay, so you would stay here until the green line is higher than your curve again. So we'll use another color here. Okay, so the highlighted parts, this part, and then this part. The three parts will be your final efficient frontier if you're facing a different interest rate, okay, than before. So let's summarize. Okay, if you're a saver, nothing changes, right? So if you're a borrower facing a different interest rate, so for some ranges, you would still prefer to invest 100% in the risky assets only. You would never borrow at the new rate because it's more expensive. But for other ranges, if you want to take up even more risks, now borrowing seems to be a better deal, because now the straight line here is again above the curve. So you will always have a better deal, which is more efficient, which provides you the highest Sharpe ratio available. Okay, so this is what happens when you cannot borrow and lend at the same rate. It is a very common discussion that could likely come up within the exams. Okay, so remember this and how to express this on the graph, and then how to find or determine the final efficient frontier so you don't make any mistakes. Okay, and I'll see you in the next video.